So Bryce Mitchell has his next fight scheduled against Said Nurmagomedov, the best ninja choke or guillotine specialist in the bantamweight division, on July 26 in Abu Dhabi. He's got 3 guillotine choke wins, all in the first or second round in the UFC, and he's been a top-ranked 15 fighter before. He's only really lost to solid fighters at bantamweight like Raoni Barcelos, Jonathan Martinez, and Loke Dog Vinicius Oliveira, but none of this is what's surprising and honestly kind of concerning to me in this matchup. I'm super concerned and kind of surprised at Bryce Mitchell's decision to go down in weight to 135 pounds in the bantamweight division. It's not like he's a huge 145 pounder or anything. I could see how his frame could do well at bantamweight, but I definitely don't think that 135 is his natural weight class. Probably somewhere around 140-ish. Do I think that if he does it properly with a nutritionist over the course of like 4 or 5 months? Yeah, I think in that case he could do it successfully and make the weight, but I don't think at all that this is the right move for him right now. You know, he'll have a size advantage for sure at 135, but he'll also not be nearly as strong. His speed will be a problem because 135ers are way faster than 145ers in the striking, which he already has an issue with, and his chin will definitely not be nearly as good going down in weight. He already took one of the most brutal knockouts in the history of the UFC against Emmett, so I'm not sure if draining yourself anymore will be helpful in his career. Obviously, there's a million things you can criticize about Bryce Mitchell, whether it's the earth being flat or him saying that Hitler wasn't a bad guy, but I want to call him out for making the absolute worst matchmaking decisions for his career. He fought Ilia Topuria, Dan Ige, Josh Emmett, and Jean Silva in 4 of his last 5 fights. And I know he beat Dan Ige, but man, those are literally 4 of the hardest hitting fighters in the history of 145 pounds and below in the UFC. If I was his manager or his team, and I know if basically anybody else was his manager or any of you guys were his manager, you would not match him up with those guys, especially not all in a row. It makes me think that his team is like against him or something. He got put out in the choke by Jean Silva, got put out in one of the worst knockouts in the history of the UFC, and now wants to do more damage to his body and brain by cutting way more weight than ever before. I just don't see how that's a good decision. Oh yeah, we saw Bryce training on his property in Arkansas by doing some striking bag drills on a hanging pig. I can't lie, he was lighting the guru up big time with the combos and absolutely teeing off on Piggy. But now you're going to go down in weight when it's not completely necessary, making it way harder on yourself physically, and then fight Said Nurmagomedov, the best ninja guillotine choke specialist in the whole bantamweight division, when you just got submitted by Jean Silva with a guillotine choke? Maybe he's been working on his front choke defense since then, but man, if he doesn't win his debut in a new weight class, we all know how that goes. You always want to win your debut in a new weight class, always. If he loses in a new weight class in his debut, that's not a good look for him and staying with the UFC, but he's controversial, so the UFC will want to keep him for a while, I think. I'm guessing that when Bryce looks back at his career, he might realize that he suffered from like a brutal mismanagement, and honestly, it makes me wonder if his manager is one of those slimy UFC managers that signs certain fights for their fighters in order for one of their bigger clients and stars in the UFC to get a more favorable matchup. Like if you give me Bryce Mitchell against Topuria, I'll give you Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree. Essentially, I'll give you a more favorable matchup for your biggest signed fighter if you give me 2 mismatches and less favorable matchups for 2 of your lesser known fighters against mine. I've heard rumors of stuff like that happening behind the scenes for managers in the UFC. Overall, I don't think this is the right move or the right opponent for him to face in his 135-pound debut. Do you guys? Let me know in the comments. I'll be replying to every single comment I get. Thanks for watching. See you later.